is a winding road, no telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights, won't stop for traffic lights. And I really wanna know, really wanna know.
All right, and happy Thursday. If you're watching live, it is Thursday, almost December. Tomorrow's December the 1st. I was looking at my December calendar here. I don't know what's happened. I don't know. This whole year is just flown by. But yes, if you're listening to this live right now, it is actually November the 30th, but it's pretty much December. It's basically Happy New Year. So here we are live here today, and I have my fabulous guest with me today, Joanna Walden. And actually, we were a couple of minutes late getting in here because we were talking about what a crazy day it has been. So I don't know if it's been crazy where you're at right now, but it's definitely been crazy. I wouldn't say bad, but just like a lot. So that's been my journey today, but we're here, we made it, and I'm super excited for this conversation. But I'm going to hand over the mic figuratively to Joanna and let her introduce herself and kind of who she is and what she's doing. But we will be talking a little bit today about her story and also about just harnessing your own energy and intention for your life.
Amazing. Thank you, Maria. Well, I can say firmly from the future, because it's the 1st of December actually already where I am here in New Zealand.
That always messes me up.
But it's equally as chaotic. That feeling of the Christmas rush is already descending. But, you know, as we are here, we are ready to have a beautiful conversation. And to introduce myself to everybody, I am Joanna Walden. I'm a visionary transformation specialist and an author and a speaker, and I help people essentially change their state of being, reconnect with their true self, deep within them, and connect with that part of them to guide their life, guide their way, and bring in a new level of awareness for how they are, who they are, and what they are up to in this reality right now. So yeah, I made a transition. I wasn't always in this work. I was in the corporate world in advertising. I worked in New York for many years, in London also. And so I made a journey, to follow a path of more passion and purpose in my life. So yeah, I've written a book about that that's called The Inside Hustle. That's more about my personal journey of evolution and stepping into this space. And yeah, I'm just really passionate about getting people in touch with this other part of themselves in their life to help them live a happier, more fulfilled life, really.
Well, and I love that. And I know when we first met, we chatted for a long time. We chatted forever because we were vibing out on a lot of levels, because I think all of us, if we're honest with ourselves, all of us really want to find our purpose and our passion. We hear it, we hear it talked about, we share things about it, we heart it on Facebook, all the things. But I think for a lot of people, it can be very convoluted. Number one, what does that mean for me? And where do I even start? And in just like the hustle and bustle of everyday life and all the responsibilities, how do you even have time to find your purpose, your passion? And I think there's some people that end up kind of jaded on that subject because it seems like this like far away concept that they never can get to. And I know I love your story, just coming out of the corporate world, which is, there's a lot of people like that. I came out of the corporate world myself. It was a different journey, but still come out of the corporate world. And it is very much an unbecoming. I always, for me, it was very much like this building to what I thought I was supposed to be, who I was supposed to be. And then it was like this almost tearing down and pulling apart the things that really never were me. And that was a very confusing time. But I do want you to kind of share a little bit from your story, because it does take courage to transition from a secure corporate job to more of a passion-led job, career. And again, we talked before we went live that there definitely are pros and cons to both sides. And I think that's where the purpose and passion comes in, because, you are losing some of the quote unquote security that you're used to. And that is a big transition for people just stepping out of that.
Absolutely. It is, and I think to your first point about purpose and what that means in the different definitions, because you're right, everybody does have a completely different definition of that. And actually, I like to think about it is that our purpose is just all that we really are, right? But what we are under the layers of the conditioning of this society and world that we've been born into and educated into and culturally conditioned and all of those things that have gone in to make us who we are. And you're right, it is an unbecoming, because there's a lot of unraveling of all the falsities that aren't really in alignment with your inner truth, so there is that process of, and I also call it a process of remembering, because you are kind of getting through all these layers that aren't really the true you, and the things that you've sort of done because you thought you should, or had to because that's what everybody else does, or that that was where you ended up and that's just what and so you should continue doing that. And I wasn't really for my particular example, I wasn't really I was very successful, but there was something deep inside me, and I've always been incredibly heart-led, that just felt like this is not really what I really want to do long term. I don't want to be the CEO of an advertising agency and in that same hustle kind of like push kind of energy, and just bending to corporate and working to live. That wasn't really what I wanted to do, is just have a life that was all consumed by work and having that lifestyle. And it set me off on a path of discovery of myself and reconnecting back to that true self and back to the, what's kind of like the true blueprint of me, rather than this construct that I'd been operating out of, that I had sort of inadvertently co-created just through my journey of life naturally. And so when you move into that space, you do have, some different fears and worries and concerns come up. Obviously, there's the safety and security of, these very easy corporate careers that you sort of sell your soul and you rinse yourself out physically and all that, because you're literally contributing everything you have, if you're anything like the work integrity that I have, to another person or company. And when you start to step out of that and forge a new path, you definitely, there's options to do it without that, or to do it as a sideline kind of gig, which I would recommend over what I did, which was just kind of like jump in.
That was what I did too. I'm all in though. That's my personality. And I always tell people, I'm like, that's what I did. I don't recommend it. This is who I am as a person.
Yeah. It's because it can be stressful in that regard. But, I was also talking to someone yesterday, and, he's like, well, what's the definition of success here? Because he's like, my definition of success, Joe, it's not monetary. It is the time that you have to do what you want to do whenever you want to do it. Yep. And I have that in spades. And so he's like, you are rich right now, even if you're not like where you think you want to be, business wise, and earning the same money that you were back in that corporate career, or could be at this, echelon of I would have got to. Yes, those things don't marry up, but at the same time, my life is so much richer in different ways. And so you do have a different way to measure these kinds of things, and that changes. But I think, our inner purpose, that's just who we already are naturally, when we allow ourselves to go there and be that, rather than not what we should do or have been told to do, or, any of that kind of area that we default into often in this journey of life, just naturally, until we're really sick to death of it and we have to get out.
Exactly. And I think there's a lot of people like that have hit this wall of like depression or anxiety or some type of mental health block. And there's some people that they lost their job, or, whatever it is, they found themselves kind of on this path of creating something that was purpose driven, that was heart driven. And I think that's the difference between just a regular small business, regular entrepreneur, kind of journey, and really finding something that's for you. Because I have a few small businesses, and I wouldn't say all of them are my passion, right? Yeah. There's some of them that's kind of just fallen in my lap, and I'm like, okay, this will be, a good opportunity. but I wouldn't say it's my passion, right? And there definitely is a difference. There's definitely a difference because, if you're spending your day and your time with something that's literally feeding you, you feel more energetic when you're done. That's a good sign. Something you're supposed to be on that path. If it is draining you every single day that you're doing it, that's a good sign that it's probably not like the tippy top of your priority list, right?
Absolutely.
And I think that is a big thing for people because, some people get into, a small business opportunity just because it's an opportunity. And I'm always one of those. It's like, okay, I'm not saying that you can't do opportunities or something. Like I have a bucket truck, right? A bucket truck, like for electrical storm work. That is not my passion. My husband's a lineman. It was a decent deal. It made sense for me to get that to send on the storms too, to make some money when he was gone. That was just a business opportunity. That is not my passion. I don't care. We want to do a good job, right? But it's not my passion. But then I have things like in the wellness world where that is my passion, right? And I think but with people that are kind of first finding their passion, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, but when they're first finding their passion, I find that they have a hard time figuring out what their charge should be on it, what they deserve for it, how to actually turn that into something that they can live off of, because they would do it all day for free, technically, because it feeds them. And that is the challenge, because even with me, I'm fine with business. I have no problem. But my passion driven stuff, I've always had a harder time. I have to be very bossy with myself to be like, no, this is what you should charge on it, because it seems like where it feeds your soul, you don't realize that, okay, we have bills to pay. You only have so many hours in a day, much to your point. You can always make more money, but you can't make more time.
Right. Yeah. I agree. It's people do, and I certainly did. You go through that period where you're not grappling with, but you're trying to work out like, oh, well, if this is just me and I love to do this, then I'll just do it for free, or I'll just do it so they get a taster, or I'll just do it, for whatever. And yeah, you do have to be careful, because at a certain point, your worth and value within is going to have an effect of that. Even though it's a nice thing to do, it doesn't necessarily mean energetically it's that great for you all the time to do that. And I think people do get into these patterns of really not being sure how much they can charge in integrity, or what they are really worth. And I think a lot of people do undervalue themselves in that way, and then go through a journey of correcting that along the way. But yeah, there's so many little things in the journey of taking a new path, and I think it's really correlating, especially right now, and even more important because this world is changing, right? Humanity is changing on a level that is basically essentially in the direction of recreating all of these old systems and things. So there's also this element which is slightly challenging, which is we're not here to do it the way that it has always been done in these new businesses or these passions or following this path of purpose. There's not necessarily going to be a blueprint or roadmap that you can just take and use, because everything is changing and shifting so rapidly. What has worked, a couple of decades ago or whatever is the blueprint for success may not work now, and we're not necessarily meant to do it like that, because we're here to forge new pathways forward to be able to show up doing something with passion and purpose in a new way that's not necessarily correlated with the old ways that you do business, for example. And we're really here to change the game, each and every one of us, in our own way. And so there's that aspect of it also, which can be challenging because it's unfamiliar. You are in the unknown. And that's when the fear can crop up and you think, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. But at the same time, we're really not here to just pick up what has been done and what has created the current situation that we are all experiencing the world over, with these imbalanced energies everywhere. And, it's just, we're not here to do that. So there's also that aspect, which I think is really important to think about. And also to be able to take heart in, because if what you're doing isn't necessarily working and showing the same results because you are comparing it to another kind of business that has been created in a different era, that is going to be different, all over.
No, I love that you mentioned that because, you do see a lot of different, here's how you do it. Here's my blueprint. Here's my roadmap. And I've always been one of those people. I am an information junkie. So I've taken those things in the past. It's not that they're bad. It's just they don't necessarily fit who I am, what I want, exactly what I'm doing. But I think that's the point. That's a good point to make because, I even have kind of my own little thing that I teach out. And one of the ways that I teach it is that you have to take these high level like ideas and put it into your own thoughts, into your own life, into your own desires, into your own, audience, customer, client, whatever. It has to be something that you take the idea of it and make it your own. If I hand you flour, eggs, sugar, salt, you can make all kinds of things with it, right? I might give you the ingredients, but it's up to you to make what you want with it, right? And I think that is kind of, I agree with you 100%. I think that's where we are going. And I'm glad we're going there because we were always meant to be there because, that old saying that you can't take a square peg and shove it into a round hole. We've been trying and it's frustrating because it's not fitting and we're not meant to fit. Yeah. And, I do want to ask, because I know, as far as, what you do now, you do work more in the energy, world, I guess you would say. How do you take and integrate like heart technology, energy practices into anybody's business model? Because, obviously that is something that a lot of businesses, lots of even big businesses are looking at. How do we change the atmosphere of our business practices? How do we change how we market ourselves? Like, not with this nasty spray and pray marketing stuff anymore. Just let's stop that. You were in advertising, you were in marketing, so you know what I'm talking about. I was in marketing too. It's disgusting.
Manipulation.
It actually gives me, like, it makes me angry. We'll just say it makes me not feel good. So exactly. So how do you take that way that we're going with sales, with marketing, with advertising, because that's what people are wanting? And how do you put that practice into a business model? Because I think that is the confusion with a lot of people that I even speak with. It's like, well, I need to sell. Yes, you need to sell. But this copy paste, like LinkedIn spam, that's not the way to do it.
Yeah. And, in how I interpret what we're all here, like when we really connect with that true self within, like the unconditioned version of us, that is actually where we have such a unique blueprint that's our like sweet spot magic. Like in my understanding, in my mind, really, I think we're all heading there, because when we connect with that within us, that level of uniqueness is what creates the most like powerful version of us to come forth, the allowance of us to get to that spot, right? When we are in our own personal power, we're connected to that true self without all this other stuff that's in the way, or a facade or the different masks or anything like that. And so I feel like we're all meant to be doing that. That's our most powerful spot to be. And we are energetic beings. This is not news, right? We're actually having this physical experience. Everything looks really physical, but if you go into the science and quantum physics of it, we are all energy. Everything is energy. And the more we start to interpret this in that way and understand that our energy is one of the most important assets that we have in the way that we can do business, and we start moving into that space, then we are sort of activating that own personal power, that own divine blueprint, energetic blueprint in a way. And it's probably not going to be the way that you think, because when you are operating from the heart, and we're all taking that journey of, we've all been very mind conditioned in this reality with the school system and the way that we do everything, and yet we are bringing that balance back to being heart-led, because the scientific research shows in regard to the heart that the heart sends more signals to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. The heart, we were all taught that the brain is the mainframe in school and that's making all the decisions. It's like the PowerPoint. No, that's not. Science is telling us something totally different now, and that the heart has that power. And so, because we've been so conditioned to sit here, we haven't been utilizing this properly, because the heart operates completely differently from the mind. It's not going to be this linear, logical, step-by-step kind of approach. It is more like, I'd say, linked with a creative, the right brain kind of approach to things, which is more pictorial, idea-based, intuitive. And it talks about how, the science even shows, they did a study where, they showed two sets of they did a control group and another group, and they showed these people cards that were going to provoke a negative or a positive emotional response in someone. And 3 to 5 seconds before people actually physically saw the cards, the heart was already, they were getting a reading that the heart already knew. So it was already making a response.
Yeah.
Because intuitively knew 3 to 5 seconds ahead of time, no matter if it was a positive or negative response, right? So this has a different level, and that's what it is, an intuitive knowing, right? If you aren't even, I'm not saying intuitive in a mystical way, I'm saying literally about in that way of the scientific understanding of it, where we almost understand what's going to happen before it even happens, really at the deepest level of our heart, which is handy when you are navigating a business. And I think in all of this, we are getting into the space of, say, vibrational marketing and using our energy and being heart-based to really be connected to that true self and our innate power in all of this to help us navigate our journey. But it's going to happen in a different way. It doesn't happen like the normal business where you're pushing, trying, throwing stuff out there, really like chasing, all of that isn't actually the way that we are most powerful in our energy. It's just, we're conditioned into it more than anything. And actually, when you start to sink into the place of energy first and focusing there, then you start to realize, wow, actually, there's a different way. And everyone is slightly unique to this, right? So everyone needs to do their own little exploration to figure out how they operate best. But even if you look at, say, just for example, like human design, and I'm not a human design expert by any means, but I do know that they categorize 70% of people as generators. And generators, the kind of way that energy works is that they spend more time in their own energy and focusing within rather than trying to go out and get from outside. And they wait for that energy to deliver back to them, because it's an inside out job, right? So it totally makes sense, because what we're creating in our own inner landscape, energetically, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, is actually what we experience in the outer world. So when we start to really work with that principle, then we are going down a different way of working, obviously, right? And so we default into these old paradigm ways of doing business, and we're really being called into the new, and to forge a path forward and experiment and try and play around and even have fun with it, to see how that can deliver. Because the thing is, then you're putting yourself in a place of an ability to connect with synchronicity. And synchronicity is one of the most amazing organizing principles of the universe and our reality. So you don't need to necessarily be chasing, trying to, get that deal or that connection with someone, because when you're spending more time in your own energy first, you're going to magnetize it to you, and it's going to be more perfect than you could have tried to, categorize / create / chase with your mental linear way of looking at things, right? Absolutely. And that in itself deliver more amazing results than what we have in this limited capacity of the mind. So it's a very different way of working that we're all navigating and getting used to, but is also incredibly exciting and has the ability to deliver like beyond your wildest dreams. I mean, that's when you get into this kind of magical space that you're like, whoa, I couldn't have believed that would have happened, and that will happen because you've spent more time in your own energetics, sort of fine-tuning that and allowing that to then be just delivered on the outside to the exact precise degree that is perfect for you when you're connected into that true self.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad sorry about that. Was you going to say something else?
No, I was just saying, so
Okay.
fascinating,
No, it
yeah.
is. And I'm glad that you brought that up because I think a lot of times there is this disconnect between people because they hear some of these things like manifestation or like a lot of these terms that are typically used in more, like you said, mystical, quote unquote, world.
Mhm.
However, it is very much physics, it is very much science. And I think that people need to kind of open their eyes and their mind a little bit and really start doing the research or really start digging in because I
Mm.
can remember back when I also thought if you would have told me that when I worked in the corporate world I would have been like okay, well, we need these graphs, we need these projections, this is what we need,
Yeah.
even though like you said, in a heart level it never felt completely right. I knew there had to be more. That's
Mm.
how I was taught, right? But there were
Mm.
still things that I never was okay with. Like I was never the cold caller,
Mm.
ever. I would refuse to cold call. I was not going to cold call. That never intuitively felt good to me, right? So
Mm.
there were some things that I just intuitively knew was a hard no. But it took me a little longer to understand some of the other things because it did seem so foreign of a thought to me that it seemed like, woo woo, as they say. I don't know, they say that in New Zealand, but they say that here in the US, woo woo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that was something that I was like, I don't know. That's a little kind of far out there for my thought processes. But
Mm.
once you start studying the science, and it's like, wait, that's exactly what we're learning over here. And
Yeah.
I have a background in the wellness world as well. And so there's a class I just taught here recently, just talking about the chakras and talking about the endocrine system because people have no idea that they're connected. And I think what it is it's a language barrier. It's a wording barrier. We're talking about the same things.
Yeah.
And I love that you brought that up because I do want to mention that because if somebody's listening and they're like, oh my gosh, here we go with the mystical talk again. I
Right.
want you to really start researching the scientific data behind this because there is science behind this all over the
There's a
place. And
lot
that's
out there.
a
There's
lot.
tons out there now.
Absolutely,
Tons.
absolutely. Well, and I know I mentioned earlier just about, there are some big companies starting to look at this because they have also seen the data and they have also seen, just as a marketing trend, people are
Yeah.
expecting more. They're expecting more, they want more, they're hungry for it.
Totally.
Um,
Yeah.
as far as going back to you going from the corporate world kind of to your own, heart led business, was there a pivotal moment that kind of propelled you into that decision? Or because I know you said that you just randomly quit, like I did too, which there was a reason that I did, but I just was curious, like, is there something that kind of propelled you into, what, this is it, this is my moment, and then you just like jumped?
Not necessarily because I did go on this journey, right? I mean, I got to the point I was living in New York and burning the candle at both ends for sure. And I felt burnt out, absolutely. But I also just felt like I felt trapped because, being a New Zealander, I was on a particular visa and I couldn't just go and do anything I wanted in New York. I had to figure out like, okay, if that's more important to me, I'm going to have to leave New York. Hopefully if I'm meant to come back here at any point I will, but I wasn't even sure what I wanted to do. I just knew that wasn't the life I wanted for myself for the next 30 years.
Yeah.
And so I literally just went to explore and connect and put myself in situations where I had the ability to connect with myself in new ways, like really connect. And I mean, I went off and did the Camino to Santiago through the north of Spain because I read this book by Shirley MacLaine that said you get zapped and realigned by the energy ley lines that were running through there. And she'd had all these like revelations. And I was like, well, that's clearly what I need. I need to go and be zapped like Shirley. And so off I went to the Camino and that's it's an ancient pilgrim path, right? So I was putting myself through a rite of passage of self-discovery to really take the time to work on and go into, because it's like a month-long journey essentially. What's really important to me? Where do I sit in all this? And just start asking those big questions because I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I just knew that I wanted to be doing something that felt good in myself and that I was passionate about. And that, I mean, at that point, I really didn't think I could make any money, even though I was very passionate about mystical, spiritual kind of stuff, and and alternative healing, and the natural elements of the world, like natural holistic health and things like that. But I just thought, how am I would have no idea if I could ever make any money or do a business in that. Here I am, many years later, totally in a business that's built on all of that. But I went on a journey of discovery, and then I started doing things on the side of work. I did expand out of my, I was just a client-facing kind of suit, you call them, like a client services manager in advertising. And I morphed to expand into production, because I thought, oh, well, that could be it. It's more creative. It's a different kind of set of things. And I was just dealing with the same challenges, really. And so I realized that wasn't the fix. And so, but on the side of that, I started doing exploratory study and other things. So I studied applied kinesiology, and then I also did writing courses and all of that, on the side, spending my time on my passions alongside of trying to figure that out. And it took me a long time to actually just totally make the leap out of it. But it was more me following my nose to figure it out, rather than something that was a lightning bolt moment that happened that I was like, okay, I'm going to go and do this. All these things sort of added up. I was literally in the space of the unknown, not knowing where this was all going or what was going to happen with it. And you've got to be comfortable about that, which is not the way that we've been taught to navigate our life at all. So that's in itself, and it's to what we were talking about earlier also. It's an example of that. And just we're not necessarily meant to know everything for it to be this very clear-cut pathway forward. And we have to remember that everything we have ever done in our life is going to add up to what is perfect for us. It's all part of the ingredients of the recipe for us to be, baking what's going to be perfect for, everything in our life, or the collective, or wherever we're focusing our attention, essentially. So it wasn't, one thing that led me. It just was this feeling deep inside me that I didn't want to be living this life that I just felt was superficial in a way, to be really frank. It just felt superficial. It felt also, I didn't like the feeling it was giving me of, selling candy to kids and working on big pharma. And I just was not okay with that in my personal values. And so I was like, okay, things need to shift. So it was more, that was my journey, rather than a huge something that happened or what have you. It was just a feeling, a deep undercurrent that I couldn't personally put up with any longer. I had to honor that within myself and take the steps to sort of figure that out. And it took a long time. It wasn't like ding, light bulb goes off at all. I really stepped myself and went on many journeys and many explorations and did many things. It was not clear cut. It was not like suddenly I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to do at all. It was me fumbling around and fumbling my way through it to land here. But I really respect all of the elements and ingredients that went into it to get me to where I am now, because all of it was necessary, and perfect, even if it wasn't in alignment or I thought it wasn't what I should be doing. Absolutely everything is. And even my background in advertising today and the way we work strategically, that inspired the way I work with clients. Those processes inspired me to think, right, if somebody's experiencing, like a brand, a flat market, or they're not experiencing success, then how can I help them go in and shift and change that by not working with their audience or their marketing or whatever, but working with what's going on with them internally, like all of this suppressed emotion that we might have from, not being able to process it at a different part of our life, and where our mental patterns are actually working against us rather than for us, and where we are operating out of limitation unknowingly, all those kinds of things, right? So it's so beautiful how it actually is all woven together and making me what I am today. And I'm so grateful for all of it. I wouldn't change it for the world. But yeah, if you're fumbling around, take heart. It's not a clear-cut journey, and you will get there just by following your heart and your knowing and all of this. It doesn't need to make sense. So get out of that, because that's the old that we're moving out of, right?
Absolutely. Well, and I think there's a lot of people that, have been on this journey that are honest about that it's like, hey, I had no idea what to do at first. I just knew this wasn't it. And, there's a few people I've talked to in the past that's like, oh, I knew I wanted to go and do this. But still, that journey between where they were and where they wanted to be, there was all kinds of unknowns. So, and I know I was even listening, they're like, I got to go on a pilgrimage. I was like, I wish I got to go on a pilgrimage. That wasn't my journey either. Mine was ugly and awful and ugly crying. And there was a whole lot of that going on, no pilgrimages. But
Yeah.
I still ended up where I feel like I'm supposed to be at this point. And I always feel like the universe, God, whatever your term is, is always narrowing us into where we're supposed to be. I always feel like I'm kind of being narrowed, but while we're being narrowed, we're blooming to be even bigger. So it feels like,
That's it.
it's like, it almost feels like you shrink and narrow what your focus is, but at the same time, you're blooming into so much more. And it's interesting to try to explain that to people that are at the beginning of the journey, because they're just at that ugly cry phase like I was at. Like, I don't know what I did. I should go back. And they're like on Indeed, or Monster Jobs, like regretting their entire decision. And, I'm not going to sit there and tell them they should or shouldn't get a job temporarily. But what I will say to them is it is completely okay that you have these feelings of uncertainty. There's like, even now, I've been on this journey for a while now. There are moments where I'm like, all right, well, I can remember where this part I didn't have to worry about, because there's those moments, and
Absolutely.
I think that's part of it though, right? And I know you work with people on just an entire well-being level, right? I want you to explain a little bit about that. And I know you kind of alluded to that just a few minutes ago, but I want you to go into more detail just about, how do you take someone that is kind of on their journey, wherever they're at this moment, help them harness that energy and intention and utilize that to kind of find what their purpose is kind of in our life's journey.
Yeah, I love that. It's, what I do when I go into clients, we've got to understand that we have many different facets of us that need attention, right? So there's not like this one-shot silver bullet for the stuff that you work. So I'm working on all layers of the being. When someone comes to me and says, I want to change, I don't like this version of me that I've become, I'm not really sure where I am in all of this, and I don't even know what my passion or purpose is or any of it. So immediately we talk about everything that has kind of gone in. I do a beautiful Q&A session to get into it, because I start reading and understanding energetically what's going on, right? People get tangled in their own loops and cycles, right? That they end up just continually repeating and perpetuating over a period of time. And it may have come in at a certain time of their childhood. They've taken on this pattern. That may have come in with something that happened, a traumatic experience in the workplace or whatever, where they lost their confidence or however it is. But all of these things are reverberating out of us because we are energetic beings, right? So I kind of like to think about us as a radio signal, that we're constantly sending out a signal into the world, and we are connecting with and magnetizing things to meet us and to interact with us that is based on that signal. And sometimes when we have elements of ourselves that we haven't addressed, that may be sitting in pain or trauma or repressed stuff, that is going to muck with the signal that is the most powerful, strongest signal for us. It's actually going to be sending out kind of like a mixed signal in a way. And so then you're bringing in experiences to help you correct that energy within your being, to give you an opportunity to move out of that pattern, out of that loop signature. And essentially, people don't recognize that often, right? And so I'm going in and helping people correct some of that stuff within them, whether it's on an emotional level, whether it's on a mental level, in our neural pathways. So we've got the subconscious energy that drives a lot of what we're up to, that people aren't often aware of or necessarily know to work with. And the conscious mind, and where we're actually sending that focus, and people just kind of can be in patterns of negativity and limitation, and perpetuating a certain part of their personality that isn't helpful to them, but they're sort of not sure how to shift it. So we go in and look at things like that, unpicking the energy, I kind of call it, because there's all these aspects of us that we've just taken on over time, not realizing it, that they're not in our greatest benefit. They're not actually doing us any favors, and the signal that we're sending out, they're not helping us connect with that most powerful place within ourselves. And that's where we fit into the purpose, right? So if we're not doing that, obviously we're not going to be able to connect with that. And so it is this deep dive to unravel, to undo some of this programming, conditioning, the layering that we've taken on through our lifetime to bring us to this certain version of us that we are right now. And this is an ever-evolving process, right? I do this work. I'm still doing it on me every day.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know it's going to be a question I asked you, which I knew the answer to, because
it's not a one and done. It's not I've done this part. I've done, like I do a signature 12-week program. Oh, I've done the 12-week program. Now I'm done. Doesn't work like that. The only constant is change, right? That is one thing we can rely on. So we need to know that this is a living practice. This is a way that we start to understand ourselves better, to be able to continue in this constant evolution that we're going through and be able to harness it for our greatest potential, for our happiness, for alignment within us, so that we're actually got such a beautiful, strong signal that we're sending out, that we're connected to our heart, that we are moving in a really positive, powerful direction that is in alignment with that part of us, and not what we think we should do, or what's been created by the mind because it thinks it's a good idea and it knows better than the heart, which is never the case. So yeah, it's an interesting process that we go through to connect with that place of potential and possibility within us, and connect with that true self, because it is a bit of a journey of undoing and uncreating, but also then rewiring yourself in the way that you are understanding yourself, this reality, how it actually works energetically, which is literally just understanding kind of like quantum physics in a way, and how that impacts us and our state of being. So it's all driven by just a different understanding, because we go to school, we're not taught that we're actually made of vibrating energy. We're not taught that, our organs and our meridian lines within us all are carrying different energies that we've maybe, been working with or had in our childhood. We're not taught that our brain and our neural patterning, we're not taught anything about our subconscious mind. I mean, these are the key facets of just understanding life as a human being on this planet that we are not taught at school. And so therefore, that's where that system is one that outdated, that we're moving out of, right? It's going to be a whole new system in the coming decades. We're moving more into, they're now teaching meditation in schools. That was never done when I went to school. But so this isn't really woo-woo in the regard that it's now just becoming more familiar, and people are understanding the impact in their lives and working out, oh, hold on a minute, there's a new way to look at this. And just because it's new and unfamiliar doesn't make it wrong or woo-woo or anything, actually.
I agree.
We're expanding into a new place of understanding our human potential and this reality and how it all works. And who doesn't want to do that? Yes.
Absolutely. So, well, and it's funny also that even though it is new, it's not new, right?
It's not. It's old.
It's very old, and it's almost like we have just forgotten all these things that we used to know as a society. And it's interesting because you mentioned all the things you're not taught in school, and I could go down that for a long time, but you're right. Like the subconscious mind, a lot of people have no idea. They're like, subconscious mind, what does that even mean? And I think a good example of that would be, because I think all of us have done this, where we get somewhere, we've driven somewhere, and they're like, wait, I do not remember driving here. And there's like this moment of like kind of fear, like, oh my gosh, how did I even get here? Your subconscious mind just knew what to do. It was just like, I don't need you right now. I'm just, gonna go ahead and do whatever. And I think it's interesting. Like, I think we need to be empowered by these things that we maybe don't understand right now. Not to say, oh, I don't know them. Is to say, oh, I don't know them, but I have the opportunity to learn. We have the opportunity to learn anything now. Mm-hmm. It is at our fingertips. It's not like whenever I was younger, we had to get out like 45 encyclopedias and hope it happened to be in there, right? There's so much out there that we have access to, to read, to listen to absorb. And, I think it's empowering, really. One of the things when you were talking, it made me think, because you were talking about vibrations, and I'm very big on that. And I'm sure you know what the Rife machine is. We use a Rife machine here and all that. But one of the big aha things for me was when I realized that all this emptiness that we see, like in front of me right here, it looks empty, right? It's not.
Yeah.
It was this moment where it dawned on me that all this emptiness that we see all around us, all in the room that I'm in right now. It looks between my desk and that chair over there. There's emptiness. There's not emptiness. It's everything is interwoven energetically. We
Yeah.
just can't see all of that.
Right.
And that was a awe-inspiring, fascinating, almost humbling thought when I like realized that. It took me a while, even after I started learning a lot of these things, it still took me a while before that one sank in.
Yeah. And it's the thing, like we've been told that anything that you can see with your 5 physical senses is what reality is. And that is basically untrue.
Yeah.
Because the whole layer of reality that is unseen, that is energetic, but that science explains in a different way, yet we can't perceive it through, if we're just looking through our eyes necessarily. Sometimes you can, if you can see like an auric field or around a plant, or you can see patches of it come in sometimes. But we have to get out of these old modes of operating and understanding ourselves that say that, oh, it's only real if you can interpret it with the 5 senses. That's just not going to get you anywhere, because this reality is so much more than that. So if you're not tapping into these unfamiliar spaces and these new ways of experiencing, interacting with, and being in relationship with everything around you, then you're probably just going to be in the old, and you're going to get forced into the new at some point. But at the same time, we have to sort of take it on board that we don't know everything, and even science doesn't know everything. And what we've ever been taught is old and going to be superseded by a whole bunch of new information that's going to come in. And so why are we hanging on to it like it's the holy grail and truth? Because it's not. That's just, science has, superseded itself many times over the course of even my lifetime, let alone beyond that. And so we have to get looser with our grip on all this stuff, and be open to understanding that there's not one way, right? And therefore, is something woo-woo? No, it's not. It's just something we don't understand yet, right? And we've got to get
into just starting to understand, because there are some studies out there. But yeah, you're very much right that there's some scientific studies that kind of are like, yeah, that's not how it is. And there's some that's like, actually, here's how it is. And I like to read both sides of those things, because it gives me a full spectrum of the picture. But, I think you're 100% right. You have to be looser to kind of absorb the information and figure out what that means in your life. How do you need to interpret it for your own life? And, for people in their business, even if I'm working with somebody, and I'm sure you're the same way, if I'm working with somebody on a business level, we get to this because it's the foundation.
Right. It is so foundational. And you can't really, if you're not having something that if you're not having any of this in your awareness that we're talking about, you need to start, because you're missing a whole untapped part of your beat. There's a whole untapped part of this whole equation that you're not tiling into. And that's potential impossibility for your business, for what you're up to, for all of it. And so it's important to go to these spaces. It's important to embrace new ways of looking at things and new understanding and experimenting and being a bit more loose and free with all of this, rather than it being like a formulaic structure that we're all dialing into as business entrepreneurs. That's just not the way it's going to work. And I think even if you look at some of the really big entrepreneurs, their journey to get there and having to find the way to do it along the way is very much part of that process. And we've got to get comfortable in it, right? Get comfortable in the unknown and comfortable in that space of doing it differently than what everybody else is doing it as well. And being pioneering in ways and having courage to try things differently and even show up differently and talk about things differently. Because, we need to be moving in that forward direction, not anchoring back into the old that is going to be superseded, naturally in just the process of evolution that we're all going through as humanity. Yeah.
Well, and I think that, for each person, obviously, anytime we're trying something new, we look for somebody to kind of help us and guide us through that. Yeah. Even if you're working one-on-one, I always recommend working one-on-one with someone, because it makes a big difference. I didn't do that when I first started, and I regretted it later, because when I did start working one-on-one with someone, it made all the difference in the world, because we can quote unquote know things, but not know them, or second guess it, or not see the forest for the trees, is a common saying. There's a whole lot. Having that person to kind of walk with us, that helps to kind of guide us through whatever process that maybe they've been on before, but still walking with somebody, you're going to have certain decisions, certain times where you have to figure out, okay, well, they do it this way, they recommend it this way. Does that intuitively feel good for me? Or do I kind of want to take that same concept and kind of make it my own? Because that's how you start to grow. It's almost, like growing up as a human, right? You learn to crawl and then walk and then run. And it's kind of that same thing, on this journey. And for some people, they've been an entrepreneur for a long time, and they've had to unbecome to figure out kind of where they're supposed to be. And I do want to ask you, what is some advice for maybe an aspiring entrepreneur, or someone that maybe has been an entrepreneur for a long time, but it doesn't feel right? What advice would you give to them if they're contemplating some shift from the conventional way of doing this to more of a passion driven way?
I mean, I think when you are moving in a direction, like if things aren't working, doing the same thing over and over again is not going to create any different results, right? I think we're all pretty familiar with that concept and understand that we're going to have to do things differently. And getting in touch with your passion is things like identifying what is your highest excitement, right? In what you're doing, and navigating yourself by tuning in, allowing yourself to go to these places that are your highest excitement, and where that leads, because this, as we know, is not a linear journey, right? You have to be able to trust in the unknown and trust that something may lead to something else. It may lead you to the answer, even if it doesn't look that it's remotely related at all. And so when you're getting in touch with that place within you, we're really sinking into our own energy and trusting and knowing ourselves more, and on a different level than maybe we've known before. And that is spending more time with the self. It's not like looking outside of you for the answers all the time, or a quick and easy solution or whatever. It's spending more time with you. And I'm not saying you need to be sitting and meditating for however long every day or anything like that, although that is handy as well. But it's more like, are you connecting in with your heart? Are you actually setting an intention in, every morning that you want to get further in touch with your passion today, and asking your heart and yourself to lead you in that way? I mean, we're working with ourselves in a different way of getting to know ourselves, because we haven't been taught the way to do that. So I mean, I highly recommend getting heart-brain coherence. Is a very simple 5-minute technique that is so much out there. You can find it on YouTube anywhere, but it very, very easily brings you from your consciousness being anchored here, which we're all very familiar with, to it dropping down to this space. And it's literally a very easy 3-step process. But when your heart and your brain is in coherence, your whole being is actually in a more coherent place. And that's the space where we are able to tap into a bit more guidance and energy within ourselves, and understand that passion of understand ourselves and listen to ourselves deeper, right? Because we're not going to be able to do that when we are in an emotionally imbalanced state. I always say, don't make any decisions in that way. If you're feeling under pressure, you're feeling stressed, you need to just take some breaths and not do anything, and actually bring in the coherence and maybe go for a walk in nature or ground yourself in, because you're just never going to be able to make, quote unquote, the right decision from that space. It's not going to happen. So we need to not do that and not feel the pressure, and be able to know that we can always create the space that we need when we are feeling a little bit differently within ourselves, to then go back into asking these questions. Because if we're hysterical, we're having a really down moment, that's not the time. And it's hard for us to listen to our inner guidance. It's just not going to be clear cut. So if you're looking for it in that moment, it may not be there, and you have to wait. It's you have to wait until you can get yourself into a calmer state, and then you're able to hear, and when you're in alignment, it's much clearer. But this is us journeying back to self, journeying back to the true self. It is us building back relationship with that place to inform ourselves, to work about us identifying the passions and the purpose to be birthed and all of that, because it's really what we already are already. And so most people don't, they're literally just doing life, like getting by. They're not actually spending any time really with themselves. It's a constant, maybe listening to a podcast or an audiobook or some kind of distraction, and all of those things that seem purposeful, but actually can still be taking you further away from really spending that time within. Because sometimes people aren't comfortable in that space. We've got to get better at it, because this is where the gold is.
No, I think it's perfect.
Yeah, everything we can do to get into that space is going to benefit us for sure. Yeah.
Well, and I think that can be difficult. And as you were talking, I was sitting there thinking, yep, I did that for far too long. Yep, I did that for far too long. Because it is, again, if something's not going right, you look for the answer. You look for the answer. You look for the answer. And it took me far too long, probably because of the last thing you said, because I never was comfortable with sitting with myself, because I had so many unhealed traumas that I had been running from my whole life. And, I know my listeners, I've heard from a lot of them. A lot of them are exactly the same way. They ran from it for so long until they couldn't anymore, right? And then you have to deal with it. So, it's very good advice to sit with yourself, to figure out intuitively, what do you want? What do you feel? What do you fear? What do you think? And I love that the heart brain connection, because you hear people talk a lot about, the brain. You hear people talk a lot about the heart, and I do talk about the brain because I love the brain. But it is a connection, right? We're all connected, and we need to really tap into, how are we feeling? Why are we feeling this way? And if we're feeling uneasy about something, why are we feeling uneasy about it? And I also love your advice about not making decisions when we are stressed out. Oh, if I would have known you back in the day, and you could have said, no, Marina, don't make this decision. That would have been great, but I did. So
we have to give ourselves the best chance of success, and we have to be able to connect in with ourselves, because we are our own best guidance, teacher, wisdom, all of it. Like, we have the ingredients within us. We actually just need to spend more time there than like all of this wasted energy outside of ourselves all the time. And then we would start to actually see the needle shift on things. We'd see the direction becomes really clear, but a lot of us are, as you say, uncomfortable with sitting in the self. But when you start to realize that this is the untapped gold that is ready there and waiting for us. And when we spend more time going into that space, no matter how you do it, whether it's working with someone like me or another person to get into the mode of doing that and get into the awareness and understanding of yourself in a different way, then, there's plenty of things like just even doing that heart breath coherence that are tons of, like, on YouTube, tons of examples of it and things like that, just to start feeling slightly differently within the self and coming from a place of coherence is always going to benefit. And yeah, I really think that just spending more time on you than anything else is really the key here in all of it. And it unlocks so much stuff, and you don't get it until you start doing it actually. So that is the way.
I 100%. I mean, I would agree with you, because I know I spent so long chasing the things that I thought I wanted. It wasn't until that I was able to go within myself that I finally realized where I was supposed to be. And it did take, walking that walk with someone else. And I do want you to kind of mention how people can connect with you if they're interested in, connecting and kind of finding out a little bit what you do, because it's so important when you feel stuck, especially. And I can tell you right now, just the messages I get, not only through the podcast, but through some of my businesses, I don't know how the economy is in New Zealand, but in the US, it is hot garbage right now. And people are stressed. They are not sure what the future holds. They're not sure if they're in the right space, if they should make a different decision. And very much to your point earlier, making those reactive decisions almost always is not the right decision. Ask me how I know. Call me. I will tell you my whole story.
Me too.
It's the responsive decisions, right? The ones where we're able to sit, like Joanna said, with yourself. And you're able to think about what you think that you should do. It doesn't mean that you still can't sometimes make the wrong decision, but you are going to almost always make the wrong decision in the reactive phase.
Yeah.
So I would like you to kind of give people where they can connect with you, and also mention your book, because we didn't even get to the book because we were chatting. But I know you mentioned it just a little bit earlier, but go ahead and mention it, and we'll put it in the show notes as well.
Yeah, of course. So you can connect with me. I have clients all over the world, right? And we're a lot, it's amazing to live in this age where, the different time zones don't matter. It can all work. And so, I work one-on-one with clients all over the world and in groups and all sorts of things. I have online events, and then I also have the in-person ones in New Zealand. But yeah, you can access that at joannawalden.com is the best place. And then on Instagram, my Instagram, I also am quite active on there. So it's at I am Joanna Walden. So it's just my name, and both of those, if you whack it in, it will pop up. And my book, The Inside Hustle, A Mystical Misfit's Journey into the Unknown, that is available on Amazon. It's an audiobook, an ebook, a paperback. That was my first book, and it's very much the comedy of errors of my personal journey of evolution. I kind of describe it as Bridget Jones meets Eat, Pray, Love on steroids, because it's it's really bumbling, and it's me bumbling my way through this journey in a very authentic way that has connected with a lot of people and helped them in their journey. It is a little bit more about my kind of spiritual journey, because I'm in a business that is holistic and energy based and all that kind of stuff. So there's, it starts in New York when I was back in my advertising career, and then moves through to me sort of embarking into this realm that I'm in now. And so, yeah, that's available on all of the platforms. And then I have another book that is a very different book, because it's not really my personality or any of my personal journey in there, but it's a book of wisdom, and it's called A Beautiful Radical Truth. And that's a bit of a mind bender. So if you're baby stepping and you're new to this world, this world of energy, then probably, go with the first one. If you're more into it and you're very familiar with all this kind of stuff, the Book of Wisdom, A Beautiful Radical Truth, is beautiful too, because it actually takes people through energetic practices as you read the text to help make those adjustments within that we were talking about, right? So it's highly transformative. That's only been out for 3 months, so I don't have a ton of feedback on that yet.
Oh.
But what I have heard so far has been pretty interesting with people. So
that's exciting.
Yeah.
I'll have to get I need to get both of them, actually, because I haven't read the first one either, but I'm really interested in the second one. So yeah, that's awesome. Well, if you're listening to this on the podcast platform, you'll be able to find the links to Joanna's books and to her social media platform, website, whatever, all in the show notes. So you can click, find out more about her, follow her journey on everything. And I just love talking to you. I looked up a second ago, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get in trouble because I went over the time they tell me never to go over. But I love talking to you. I just talk to you, I feel like we're just chatting on the phone. I'm like, yeah.
We can be here all day. This is what happened last time.
We did the last one. I don't know how long we were on there. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up for the day. But thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks so much for having me, Maria. I really honestly appreciate everything that you're putting out there and creating this platform and providing people with all of this beautiful expanded information from all the speakers that you have on. And it's really to be applauded, because that's what the world needs right now. So yeah, I'm really appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. And if you're listening on the podcast platform, if you would do me a favor and go ahead and hit that subscribe button, that way you never miss an episode.
Beautiful.
No telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights, won't stop for traffic lights.